Hi everyone, my name's Judy. I had the absolute pleasure of being on the same panel just earlier before with Joe Ball and the wonderful Irfan, and in their talks that they just did before really highlights the depth and heart that they bring to our society and world, but also the highly eloquent expressions that they have. And now you have me. I'm the nerd where I'm just usually I like to talk about my special interest and more likely to say brain, good, society, barriers, must, fix, in a way. So thank you for your patience with me being slightly less eloquent, but I will try to express myself as clearly as possible. So I am a clinical neuropsychologist and a nerd, which is why I want to talk about these things. In a world where we have technological advances, especially within AI. I'm sure we're seeing all of this. Last year, where AI was compared to where AI is today is crazy. Are our brains keeping up? Are our human minds keeping up? And that's what I really want to encourage society, but communities and ourselves to really reflect on that. It's something that I actually think about all the time, especially within my work where I'm working with people from all walks of life. From, let's just say, from young kids who are born into technology and social media and that level of connectedness to older adults who are struggling with the increasing pace of change, where they're perhaps more used to, let's just say, phone technology or just going to a bank in person, and now everything's moved online. So in a world where our brains and our understanding of the brain has not necessarily kept up to pace, I don't feel, with the technological advances, which is actually really hijacking you, making use of our brains. So that's something I want you to think about, and then I'm hoping to go through with you today. I would not be a neuropsychologist if I didn't do the obligatory diagram of a brain. So this is how I prove I am a neuropsychologist. Here is a diagram of a brain. And there's plenty of research out there talking about our understanding of how the human brain interacts with technology. We understand that with regards to the way that a lot of algorithms and technology, especially social media, is built around to really access our dopamine pathways, right? So, and what do we mean by dopamine pathways? It's really to fulfill our pleasure around instant gratification, for example. And this is in some ways why I talk about using our brain knowledge for good or for perhaps less good or for less altruistic purposes. So if we have here understanding of a brain that we have intrinsically within ourselves these instant gratification pathways, what could we use these for? Well, in some places, in marketing, they will use it for marketing, right? So if we don't keep up with discussions around society, what it means to be human, what it means to be a good human, what it means to have a good society, as these technological and brain and neurological advancements and understandings occur, we run ourselves of being in great risk of societal decline, is how I feel anyway. So I talked about instant gratification. There's also what we have cognitive ease with calculators. We were told, I was told when I was young, I might not necessarily always have carry a calculator around. So we had to learn mental maths, right? And look at us now. We all have a calculator on our phone. I also showing my age, I would have been at the time where we still had to use the Melways to look at maps, and I knew my directions better. Now, I was just talking to my fiance the other week that I now locate myself through vibes. Because, it's like I feel like this building's the area and I need Google Maps to tell me where I am. So technology has really advanced me. I now don't have to rely on my mental skills to calculate things and to know where I am. But perhaps, what I don't want it to do is I don't want it to affect my critical thinking or deep thinking. We probably all come across this as well, hearing about how we are more connected than before. I can now make friends with someone on the other side of the world and not ever have met them. But at the same time, we're lonelier than we have been. So how do we explain this? And we can only explain these things if you really delve into our own understanding of what makes us human, what we want as humans, and what our brains want, and so forth. So technology in the human world. Okay, double-edged sword of technology. Good and bad, right? Being a nerd and a video gamer, I really wanted to get into really using our understanding of the brain and how we learn to improve our education system. That's a huge interest of mine, because I only realized that was when I was playing. There's a game called Assassin's Creed, for those who aren't gamers. I know it's good. The new ones just came out. I'm going to check that out. But I learned more about the Italian Renaissance era playing Assassin's Creed than I ever did in high school. So what is it about that? Right. So technology, games, and the digital positivity that comes out of that are great. And that's one of the positive impacts. There's a lot of mental health apps and resources that are out there that we can access. Again, a wonderful thing, potentially for some people where they have perhaps social anxiety, and there are barriers in the first instance to accessing mental health when we've got digital apps that can do that for them, tools for creativity and so forth. Challenges, there's addiction. Whether we like or not, there's reduced attention spans. Why am I here again? No, just kidding. Reduced attention spans, social comparison that we have. So while we are more connected, we are perhaps not necessarily connected in the most ideal way. If the friend that I connected up on the other side of the world, am I now comparing my level of what I consider success to whether they are, if we're around the same age? Are we reaching the same milestones and so forth? And the Google effects, like me relying on Google Maps to know where I am in life. Not in life, just spatially. Okay. So AI, totally topical, super sexy at the moment. Same with the word neuro. Neuro is super sexy. That's why for a while neuroplasticity was a very sexy word. I think it still is a sexy word. But I'm going to break it out I'm going to sort of tear the magic away. My understanding and my interpretation of neuroplasticity is just a sexy word for practice and continued exercise. I digress. So, applications of AI. We've got here some things they're using already: real-time mood tracking via wearables, AI-assisted diagnostics for mental health conditions and little health conditions. There's a lot of research coming out, not necessarily not within the health sector, in terms of diagnosing cancers and inflammations and being much more accurate than medical health professionals, and also potentially mental health professionals. Might be more accurate than mental health professionals in terms of diagnosing mental health conditions. We've got here dream decoding for PTSD. I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy, but it's happening, people. In Japan recently, they've made really interesting strides into decoding the recordings of brain activity in a part of our brain to reveal images of what the brain is putting up. Right, so if we can now have access potentially, and I think it's advancing quite quick, to hack it, to look into your brain, decode those brain signals to say you are now thinking of a pink elephant. We can actually see that from your brainwave. It's really cool. Are we talking about how we're going to use this knowledge, and what's going to happen as we know these things? So that's what I mean by ethical considerations. Earlier on, you had this wonderful, the Human Rights Commissioner talk about data and privacy being a major issue. It is, because if I can hack into your occipital lobe and see what you're seeing, that's kind of, how much of that is going to be private now if I can access to that. There's also, we talked about the over-reliance of AI while maintaining human empathy in care. I think in our panel, I also, mentioned the benefits of some people accessing AI for therapy and actually finding it better. And I've looked at some of the ways that the therapeutic approaches these AI machines have used. They've been pretty good, I have to say. Sometimes better than some psychologists that I've met. So, but having said that, we still need to be careful. It's still a growing area, and we can't just completely let what makes us lay to waste. And so we need to keep up with our understanding for that. And bias in the programming, we just talked about that previously. So, which really highlights the need for us to have a lot of discussion around who made these AI programs in the first place? Who made this software in the first place? I know Wonder Irfan sort of gave a lot of examples previously in the panel, and as well. But another example to add to that was that the airport security facial recognition didn't recognize Asian faces, some Asian faces, because the eyes were considered too small, so it was not considered a face. So who made that programming? So that's the bias in programming. We can't rely entirely on AI if we don't think, where does AI come from in the first place, right? And that's how it links to psychology. If we don't understand ourselves as humans or ourselves as brains, we're in huge trouble. VR sounds really cool, doesn't it? It's actually been around for a while, and not just in the video game realm. Unfortunately, again, I digress, VR hasn't really taken off in the gaming industry. Perhaps it's just not as convenient, but we can talk about that another time with my fellow gamers. Virtual reality, the health industries and the psychology industry is really keen on trying to leverage on that, just so perhaps because it kind of sounds cool, and it has been useful. So VR, especially for people with phobias and anxiety, that's been really helpful for PTSD in terms of exposure therapy. So you can try and go onto a plane without actually having to go onto a plane, and that's a really safe space and a wonderful technique to use VR. Might be ways to enhance our psychological assessments, as we said before, and also just personalize and potentially even gamify our health and our mental health and treatment. Cool. Psychological cost of overuse is when we use too much. When we use too much technology, it impacts our sleep. There's heaps of research on this, and sleep is a absolutely fundamental part of us being human. I love sleep. I don't think I get enough of it. But using a bit too much technology can impact us, and that impacts our brains. Because where does sleep come from? Sleep comes from everything comes from our brains. Sleep is a very important part of it. We talk about cyberbullying and that's impact, and was slowly understanding more and more around that. I was just talking to the wonderful Georgie the other day around cyberbullying and how that impacts, and how we need to talk with multicultural communities and multicultural men about how cyberbullying is actually a form of abuse, and providing that understanding around that. And then if we talk about instant gratification, we're used to getting things instantly. So if I text you and you don't text me back, I will feel like you hate me, and I will, perhaps feel even lonelier than before. So all these things, data, technology, is changing the way that we view ourselves, we view each other, our expectations with each other, and so forth. And these are all the discussions I'm trying to encourage us to really have discussions around. Because if we don't have a think and a reflection of how we think and reflect, then we're at risk of the computer or other people doing that for us. Which is why this is a really wonderful field called neuroethics. And I encourage you all to have a think about that as well. So as we advance technologically, neuroethics becomes increasingly crucial. There has to be some kind of body and lots of discussion around data and privacy, us moving forward as humans, and as humans that carry brains and which come with emotions and feelings and all those kind of stuff, and how we can keep up with the advances in technology. So how can we maintain human autonomy in an AI-augmented world? So some of the things that we can do is to keep our humanity as we move forward with designing AI, new programs, new algorithms, and forwarding our technology. If we can try and keep a focus on what makes us human, what brings us together as humanity and as a person, what we would like a better world to be, perhaps that's a good starting point for us. And then really basically remind yourself to take breaks that we have. So we really need collaborative efforts, which means lots of discussion between psychologists, researchers, and so forth, but also with the technology people, with business owners and ethicists. Right? We need people who are ethicists to bring us together and be part of that discussion as we move forward for a safer society. So as this Matt person shared, Matt, I found out, is a social entrepreneur, so it's an interesting dude. Technology is best when it brings people together. And I do recommend checking out these links when you can. Thank you. Brain good, barriers there, must fix.